When compared with the budget for the full year versus actual figures on page 12, 98.1% of the budgeted revenue was received. This is compared to 96.1% of budgeted expenses shown on page 14. So the excess of revenue over expenses for the full year was $375,561, which was slightly ahead of budget by $34,000 or 9.9%. And those numbers are all contained in the report. Are there any questions about the June and year-to-date financial highlights?
Motion to approve the June financials, please. Hank Carr.
First by Hank.
I'll second. Robert.
Lindsay, will you do the roll call, please?
Hank Carr.
Yes.
Shannon Castillo.
Yes.
Tracy Johnson.
Yes.
Brent Long.
Yes.
Aaron Murphy.
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols.
Yes.
Seth Thomas.
Yes.
Craig Torbett.
Yes.
Robert Williams.
Yes.
And Joe Wise.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question for the staff. So will we always run 2 months in arrears on a go forward, or will it eventually get back to 1 month in arrears on budgets?
I'll respond to that in that we're really 1 month behind still because of the transition and the learning curve for me, and the fact that I started right before the audit time. So it's we're a month behind, and I think within another month or so we should be caught up.
Jim, understand fully. I appreciate it. I just want to kind of make sure I understood what the expectation was on a go forward. So thank you.
All right, next up we have committee reports. We'll start off with the HR committee. The HR committee has met twice this month. Shannon, Tracy, Jody, and I serve on that committee. You have in your packet the associate's guide that was created by Timber Aldridge and has been reviewed by the city attorney and HR director. The internal control policy is based on the NetRep version that was created with Blackburn, Childress, and Stegall. That was finalized by Jim Dorton. This was also reviewed by the city's attorney. 2 changes will need to be made to this document on page 3. Dan, if you can get there, we will strike the name Blackburn, Childress, and Stegall PLC. And on page 6, there is a typo with the words federal agency appearing twice. Are there any questions or comments about these documents?
Yeah, Diana, you sent me a note yesterday, and I just asked that you clarify it for the group on how the time away from work, it would be page 14 of the document, and what that addresses. And if I understand you correctly, that all personal time includes vacation time and sick days. And so as represented, 16 days for anyone with less than 3 years of tenure would be the allowable time off. And that, in my mind, I translate that into 10 days of vacation, or 10 paid days of work and six sick days. Is that accurate?
Yes. So when we were under NetRep, we had that was actually 10 days of vacation and then 10 days of sick day. And so Timber, when she was working on this, recommended go to a PTO where you have the flexibility, whether it's taking time off for a doctor's appointment or whatever, it's all falls under paid time off. So this actually reduces the days a little bit, but the paid time off can be used for, if you look on page 31, vacation, sick pay, personal time, and then there is also the Family Leave Act that is also part of this that you could take if you needed to take additional sick for some type of extended health care. That is part of this as well.
I appreciate it. I think the days all make sense. Over on page would be 31, I guess, page 15 of this document. It talks about year end up to 40 hours of accrued PTO can be rolled over in the next calendar year. And I guess I'd just love to hear from the group. In my mind, we certainly encourage it here, people to take their time off. It's important. It's important to job performance, company morale, everything, for people to take time off. And I don't personally think we ought to be able to roll vacation time over. Sick time up to a point may be reasonable, but I don't know how the group feels about it.
I'll weigh in on that. As a mother, one of the reasons that I know that is in policy, sometimes it can help out with time off for pregnancies, things like that. So 40 hours is 1 work week, 5 days. And that can help in those kinds of situations. We've got a small rollover policy here at my company. I think it's 5 days as well. So I think that, or if you're anticipating a surgery or any time, a knee surgery, anything like that, I think that sometimes having that provision can allow employees to plan ahead.
I appreciate it. Makes sense to me. I just wanted to hear the explanation.
And my internet cut off a little bit. I don't know if you all heard this, but the city attorney, the city HR director, and the city manager has all looked through this guide.
Right. These recommendations are coming from a committee as a motion for approval. So do we have a second?
Second.
Lindsay, can you do the roll call, please?
Hank Carr,
Yes.
Shannon Castillo,
Yes.
Tracy Johnson,
Yes.
Brent Long,
Yes.
Aaron Murphy,
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols,
Yes.
Seth Thomas,
Yes.
Craig Torbett, I can't see the screens.
Sorry, I couldn't get it to temporarily.
Robert Williams,
Yes.
and Joe Wise.
Yes.
Additionally, the HR committee has received the employee evaluation document from the city. We'll be bringing that to the board next month for approval. The next thing we'd like to discuss is something I had emailed about yesterday, which is the idea of having the executive director evaluated by Summit Leadership. Shannon, would you give a little bit of background on Summit Leadership?
I cannot say enough good things about Dave McCauley and Summit Leadership Foundation. They've been a great service to our community. We know as a HR committee that this is a task that we need to do. We thought for this particular event to evaluate our executive director that we thought it best to bring someone from the outside, an impartial person, to go ahead and administer that. So what Dave McCauley is suggesting is that he has a couple phases that he'd like to do. I'm very much for this. He'd like what I love about Dave McCauley is he's not just doing an employee review, but also he'd like to then implement some kind of go forward process after this. So what he's looking to do is to have the team member, in this case, the interim executive director, to conduct a self-evaluation, how they perceive their performance over the past 2 years, and then an open 360 review of a number of people, not just on our board, but in our community, that would then also do an evaluation, and then create some kind of growth plan for that team member, dealing with what could be areas of opportunities and celebrating their strengths. And then from there tends to be 2 paths forward. One is specific goals, monthly coaching and accountability for that team member. Or if this team member, it doesn't look like they're going to work out, then we would have a 90-day transition plan. So that's what we are suggesting. And I'm up for questions.
Hey, Shannon, this is Aaron Murphy. Got a question. Is how much are they going to charge for this service again?
Brent, you want to answer that?
Yeah. So really what one of the great things about Dave is his desire to serve the community. And for the initial review, they are actually volunteering to do that at no charge. That's the main thing that we are here to consider today, because that would not require approval of any type of funding to get the ball rolling on this, which, as everyone knows, we have a looming deadline. And then after that, at next month's board meeting, we can talk a little bit more about phase 2 and what the cost would be on that on a going forward basis, and how we would fund that if we so chose to do. But today, for the phase 1, to answer your question, to do the review of our executive director, Diana, it would be no charge.
Mr. Chairman, I have a kind of maybe a question and a comment. So I love the idea of having Dave facilitate this process. I think it would be beneficial to everybody to just to get a fresh perspective on it all. And I think the guy, I've worked with Dave for 20 years, and I trust him and value his opinions. The one part of the proposal that I would ask to be changed is, I believe that every board member on the JCDA should have a chance to have input, not just 8. I don't know how you pick the 8. I don't think that's the right idea. If you're doing a review that's impartial, you really, everybody ought to have to, commit to their questions and comments. But I think everybody ought to have some input, because they're all going to have to vote on it at the end of the day. I think the other thing is, I think the county mayor and the chairman of the county commission, and then the city manager and the city mayor, at least those 4 ought to be included in that process, because at the end of the day, those are our clients as well. We're managing a lot of money for those folks. We interact with them a lot. The executive director does, I should say, and we should just get their feedback. And I think that'll be very helpful if you got that perspective. And so those are suggested changes from me. The one thing I don't think it's reasonable to ask him to do this without any fee. That this is not going to be a simple process. That's a lot of people to talk to. And so I would be concerned about doing this gratuitously without some commitment towards the long-term coaching concept. And I'd be supportive of having Dave McCauley become a 1-year participant of our board and enter into a coaching process. And I realize that's not what we're talking about here, and maybe that's where we get to. But I think there's a lot of merit to that conversation. But I think there's a fair amount of work to do here, and doing it we should budget some money is all I'm telling you for this. I think it's reasonable to make a donation to Summit, if nothing else, for that work.
I absolutely agree. And I echo your suggestion about really tailoring who does the evaluation, including the city manager and county mayor. And I do think it's would be the right thing to do, even if it's just 6 months, to engage Summit into some kind of contract.
And to be clear, if we were to engage Summit with any type of contract, their contracts are all on a month-to-month basis. So they're, if at some point we did not see the need anymore, the value, it could be discontinued.
Mr. Chairman, do you need a recommendation to move this forward?
I don't believe we do if we're not talking about money, but if we're just talking about purely phase one, but if we're going to get into commitment to an ongoing process where we're going to be committing funds, then we would.
All right, I'll make a motion that JCDA enter into a 6-month agreement with Summit Leadership to handle phase 1 and phase 2 of the employee review and coaching.
Is that subject to Hank's suggestions about participation?
Yes, including Hank's suggestions for who should be doing the performance.
Question, this is Aaron again. Should we, okay, so phase 1 is, how long does that take? A month, if I remember correctly? Or
he should be our next phone call as soon as we get off this board.
Can we, I feel more comfortable if we get a price tag before we make a 6-month commitment. Just wanting to know what is the financial obligation on our end before we.
You have that
The email that Brent sent everyone yesterday has that in there. It's $600 a month.
Okay.
I'll second that. With the changes on who gets reviewed, and essentially what I think I support is giving the chairman the leeway to negotiate the phase 2 portion of this, but that we move forward with phase 1.
Are we ready for roll call?
So just to clarify, Hank, you are making a motion that we move forward with phase 1.
Actually, Shannon made the motion that we move forward with phase 1 and 2. I support that. I second that motion, provided that it includes the full board review and county mayor, county chairman, city mayor, and city manager. And those were friendly, those were adjustments that Shannon made.
Okay. Any further discussion? Lindsay, if you would.
Hank Carr,
Yes.
Shannon Castillo.
Yes.
Tracy Johnson,
Yes.
Brent Long,
Yes.
Aaron Murphy,
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols,
Yeah.
Seth Thomas,
Yes.
Craig Torbett,
Yes.
Robert Williams,
Yes.
and Joe Wise.
Yes.
All right. Next up is the transition team. Transition team was created after the last strategic planning session in June. Members are Tracy, Freddie, Robert and Lindsay. Craig was brought in as the chair of the foundation. Diane, if you would you go over the plans that the transition team has come up with?
Yes,
Diana.
so page 49 in your packet, we begin with, I begin with a review of the strategic planning session that we had in June. And if you'll remember that all of you all received the notes from that in August. At that meeting, we took the objectives that were laid out in the redevelopment plan for the JCDA and divided them into categories. What seemed to be more of TIF and property management, and then also what fell under the 4 points of the Main Street approach. And so if you'll look at this slide, this is how we broke it down. The priorities of the JCDA is the facilitation of TIF, property management and disposition of John Sevier Center, property management of Downtown Center, and parking solutions. Parking solutions actually went back and forth. It was very even. Some felt it went under JCDA, some felt it went under the some of the Main Street areas. The Main Street programming included economic vitality, and that was new business recruitment, small business development, which is supporting our current small businesses, and cultivating entrepreneurship. Design includes placemaking, safety issues, and historic preservation. Marketing is marketing events, social media, and the 2 websites that we manage. And then organization would be fundraising and membership for that nonprofit. So go into the second slide. From there, I put together several options of responsibility and staffing models and presented it to the transition team. Not knowing where additional funding for staff would come from, the transition team felt like the option in front of you made the most sense. This is very similar to the structure that we had with the Washington County Economic Development Council when it was created. They had one umbrella organization where the staff was housed. They had shared responsibilities, which enabled them to offer benefits and shared space for the staff. This structure also does not put too much responsibility on what in essence is going to be a new organization, as most of the foundation board of directors I anticipate will be changing. So if you'll see, we have an umbrella organization of Johnson City Development Authority. Their primary responsibilities are those 3, tax increment financing, property management, and financial oversight. The foundation is an organization under the JCDA. They will take over the Main Street programming, and then your employees stay under the JCDA. The one addition that I added there was a part-time administrative support position. So we've realigned responsibilities. Just the color coding is just to give you an idea of the amount of time the staff would put into each organization. And this is definitely an estimate because we're still working through the handoff on the responsibilities. Jim began the operations, taking over operations of John Sevier in just this month in September. So we're still looking at responsibilities and timing in that model. I'm going to keep going down. Here's how the individual staff responsibilities have been divided between our 2 full-time and 1-time part-time staff, and it also includes this part-time administrative support. The executive director would be responsible for JCDA board and the foundation board, the TIF advisory board, John Sevier disposition, business recruitment, small business development, parking solutions, and HR. Finance manager handles all the financial responsibilities for JCDA, TIF, and the foundation, and then handles the John Sevier operations. Marketing manager does placemaking, marketing, events, design. I didn't add in website, but we do have 2 websites. And then if we were able to hire a part-time administrative support person for 10 to 15 hours a week. They would do administrative for JCDA and the foundation and any grant administration that we would have. I'm going to keep going. This is a potential future model. You'll see that it has a addition of a downtown development manager that would be primarily connected to the foundation. As the economy changes and the foundation begins to create a revenue stream and property management responsibilities increase, especially as we get closer to the disposition of John Sevier and the resale of that property. And then when Northeast State's lease comes up for renewal, there's going to be some more responsibility on your executive director. You see the staffing still remains under the same umbrella organization, and I think that's important. So you can have quality employees, you need to be able to offer benefits, and having it all under one structure, and it also has the connection to the JCDA in city funding and oversight. And then I'm going to come down, and this is just an idea of what the revenue sources and the support the JCDA would need to do for the foundation. This is for programming only. This is not considering staff. This is just programming for the foundation. The JCDA would support it this fiscal year at 100%. Moving forward, the foundation would find ways to raise funding through memberships and fundraisings. I believe it would be very difficult to do much fundraising this fiscal year due to the pandemic. But in fiscal year 21, 22, you'll see that they will add 35% to money that they will raise, and then it goes to a 50-50 in fiscal year 22. I will say that the National Main Street program, they say on average the local programs are supported between 45 and 50% from the municipality that it serves. And that's all I have for this.
Diana, can you go back up a couple of slides? Just to either one of those will be fine. Yeah, you can stop right there. No, yeah, any one of those is fine. So the downtown foundation, it stands on its own. It is not tied in any way to the JCDA. Legally, there's just no connection to it right now, correct?
In their bylaws, there is not a connection that was stated, but it was set up to be the 501c3 that was connected to the JCDA. And Craig, I think you were a part of that if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's, but Hank, to your point, legally, no, it is a completely standard 501c3.
So Diana, just describe how you see that control and accountability working between the foundation and the JCDA.
So the foundation will need to rewrite their bylaws, and we will need to intentionally put in there, make sure that it is included that they are a partner organization to the JCDA. I would recommend that as their board is being developed, that there is a representative from the JCDA that sits on their board, and their budget be approved by the JCDA. This is very much like Ballard Health and Ballard Foundation, ETSU and ETSU Foundation. Their employees are ETSU employees, but the direction that the foundation goes, recommendations come from the university or the partner corporation. And so I would recommend expanding the board of directors to ensure one member is a JCDA board member, approval of their budget, and and then shared services. The benefit of having a 501c3 as a partner with the JCDA is also there's some opportunities for cost savings for the JCDA, like all of our computer software is being purchased through the foundation so that we get it at a discount. So there's some benefit both ways. Right now, the JCDA does cover the D&O for the foundation.
So there's still a fair amount of work to do to go in and restructure this organization. I guess that was I get the structure and I understand the benefits piece. I see all the value there. It makes sense. I just don't understand what really technically what control we have to do this, other than I'm not sure well, I just don't know how we can make this happen, but I guess that organization exists at the JCDA's, I use the term pleasure, it's probably not the right term, but because our money is what funds it, or the money, I think to a great extent, right now is what operates it. So.
I think this is Tracy, you're exactly right. This was, in my mind, the first step, and there is still a lot of work to do with development of the foundation and working with them on their bylaws and all of that. In my mind, I just didn't want to go, me personally, I don't think that we should go too far down the road until the board looks at this direction. So a lot of the details have not been fluffed out with, how the foundation board looks and all that. So we just wanted to kind of do a gut check here. And, keeping the employees under the parent organization seems to be a current theme with other organizations that have foundations. And I like the idea, the city has charged us to keep that Main Street designation and has aligned out their support of that designation. And I feel like if we keep the employees under the development authority and then charge the foundation with those Main Street objectives, it allows the JCDA to provide the guidance, since the city is providing some funding towards those things. So this is just the first step. So I think that what you would see at the next board meeting would be a lot more meat, if you will, around this model.
I appreciate it. I think we are, or at least certainly I speak for myself, the foundation is just something that's just totally foreign to a lot of folks on this call, and because it's been around a long time, it hasn't had a lot of activity inside of its organization. And I worry that we get trapped in another year of organizational structure building and not dealing with these things over here on the left-hand side of the page. That's my concern, but I get the Main Street program and the whole desire to move the marketing piece and separate these two. There's some merit there. I'm not completely clear on how this whole thing shakes out, but
I think the good news is if you serve on one of these three committees, the economic vitality, design, or the marketing, they're pretty strong committees, which is great. So the good news is if we can work with the foundation and help them build their board back up, they've already got some really great community folks working on these committees that are doing really good work. Last board meeting, if you remember, we approved TIF funding for the Breezeway project. I'm a part of that design committee, and it's, Lindsay, how many people are on the design committee? 15? It's a big committee, and they are doing great. So to me, that's the good news, and what encourages me with this foundation shift and building the foundation. If the Main Street committees were not strong, it would worry me too. But because that piece is already functioning really well, and Lindsay's starting to take the reins with those committees, I feel like we can really support the foundation, help them build up, and they've already got a it's not a fast car, but they've got a car with four wheels on it.
You need to add another bullet under that box on the right that's called sustainability, and then out to the side, well, you have it down here, membership and fundraising, but
Mhm.
I got to tell you, that's going to be it's not a full-time job, but it's going to be a substantial part of the work in that organization. If you're going to raise half their funds, and I don't know if that's 50 or 60,000 a year, I don't know what it is, or 100, but that's no simple task. And I'll speak for myself. I don't really want to be a part of the fundraising part. Does not intrigue me one bit, and I'll let anybody else chime in about that one.
Well, I'll speak to this just a little bit, Hank. As a part of the foundation, I guess probably since its outset and part of this process and the conversation that we've had so far, a couple things to point out. One, you're absolutely right. There's definitely work to be done. As far as what we've done thus far is essentially what we're doing here. We've notified our existing board that this is looking like a direction that we're going to be asked to take. We've not had that in any form of a formal meeting yet, but I don't believe there was any pushback to this being a direction that we'd be willing to take on. I think part of it, and anyone that was a part of this, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of what I think is precipitating all this is the visioning things that we've done over the last year. That, what I kept hearing from several of our board members and some from the city as far as guidance, saying that they wanted to see JCDA function more precisely on the development things and not a lot of the things that frankly fall under what are requirements of Main Street designation communities. And given that the city has tasked us with not requiring, certainly wants to keep Main Street designation, that has to fall somewhere. So by doing this, I think we're going to be able, and it would not at all surprise me if we see some shifting amongst the boards, because I know there's a few people on our existing JCDA board whose interests really lie more in the fundraising and in the design and in these types of things that really, frankly, don't have any interest or at least limited interest in the operation, acquisition, and financing of another John Sevier type project. So I think you're going to get a more streamlined focus in both boards, and I think it's probably the right way to go forward.
It makes a lot of sense, Craig. Your thoughts about people kind of finding the right seat on the bus has a lot of merit to kind of where we're heading. So,
and just to piggyback on what Craig said, I think we'll find some former JCDA board members like Atimbra who are very passionate about downtown that would like to continue to serve on the foundation. So I really see that we will be able to strengthen that board, and they'll be able to hit the ground running because they already have familiarity with both the Main Street program and the JCDA and our mission and future mission.
So what's the recommendation today? Is there action we have to take?
Before there's any recommendation, Diana, can you go back to slide 50, please? So I love that we're trying to separate JCDA and the Main Street program. I think it's a great plan to shift that over to the JC Foundation, which was primarily used as a fundraising arm. What is concerning to me is when I look at the staff, again, Diana kept saying it was too much work to do both JCDA and the Main Street program. And I'm still seeing that the executive director is doing both. So that's my only concern. When I look at this initially, I say, well, that's not a transition at all. You still have staff doing both. We're getting feedback from staff saying they can't do both. So I guess it's fine for now, maybe, but this isn't a plan for success when all we've heard is that it's too much work for one person. So I guess the only other suggestion that I have is you take this marketing manager and you make them director of the Main Street program. And that may not be something we can do right now, but I think that's something you need to aspire to, because just because of the information that Diana has kept sharing with us is that it's too much work for one person.
Shannon,
I will say that we have, I remind you that we've separated some responsibilities. So in last year, I was handling the operations of John Sevier and design, all the design work. And so so we have already reallocated those responsibilities. And so I think moving forward, until we get to a funding mechanism that we can move to this, I think this is doable for the time being, especially if we can get the administrative support. The operations of John Sevier takes a lot of time, and so we've moved that into, that was one of the part of Jim's job description when we hired this position, was the operations, and so he has taken that off of my responsibility. I still think business recruitment ties very closely in with the JCDA responsibilities, and it makes sense that the executive director continues to do that, because it's very much part of your economic development for your downtown, for your district.
and Shannon, I'll add to that also, there's, you know, I think that's part of why, and I was a little bit of part of the creation of these charts. Your point, that's why slide 52 is there as to kind of where we would aspire to go. You know, we're somewhat hamstrung with the fact that we've got the current staffing that we have in place with the current budget that we've been given and the cuts that we've experienced from the city. So that's where we're starting from. And these are all things that I feel like have to continue to move forward. So I think slide 50 is representative of probably the best options that we can do given the resources and funding that we have at the moment. But we believe pretty strongly in the fact that 52 does illustrate kind of where we would need to go or we should go. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, we need to task the foundation with doing more of the fundraising, either through, like we said, fundraising and or memberships. It could additionally be grants of various types, but we've got to bring more money in order to be able to afford to do the positioning that's represented on slide 52. And at the same time, we, you know, in order to get them, we got to have the fundraising. But once we get that much fundraising going in an ongoing basis, we're really going to need that staff person at that time. So one problem kind of creates the other. But I think that that's where we definitely would want to go. And I do think that that's why showing the, you know, the time frames, the color coding there was intended to show that that person of a downtown development manager would be primarily tasked to supporting the goals under the foundation. But from an org chart standpoint, they still are organized under JCDA. And in my way of thinking, and I certainly know they've mentioned that these were models that are used by other foundations, both ETSU, Valid, and others. It's also not completely foreign from what we've done in the past when we as JCDA had a lot of those downtown development functions, but were under what started out as WCEDC and then became NetRep. So I think the staffing definitely needs to be handled under one organization. We're certainly not large enough, I think, to justify the cost, expense, and benefits costs and everything else, administering two sets of staff at two organizations.
So let's go back to 51. So Diana, you're saying you're just going to move two things from what you do now onto the marketing manager, and that's fine if you think you can handle that all. Even I'm trying to help you out here, but if you think you can handle it all, go ahead and do it.
Two things plus the operations, right, Diana?
Correct. There is some, you know, some additional organizational structure work that we need to do. I'm hopeful that the human resources, this has been a very busy last 6 months. And, but we've gotten, now the only thing left is the review process for HR. We have, insurance has been set up. All of our forms and guides and everything, all that is in place. And so the HR will not be won't take as long as it has been recently. Parking solutions, we can sort of put on the back burner a little bit right now because of the pandemic, but we continue to have challenges with that. But I feel comfortable right now that that the executive director could take on this responsibility, and with the 2-3 key things that have already been taken off the plate.
One of the things that I like about this model, and Diana, if you'll go back to slide 50, Hank, to your question, I believe what the committee is asking is a recommendation to proceed with further developing slide 50. We've got a lot of work to do there, but obviously just didn't want to develop anything further without some board conversations. What I like about this model, and one of the recurring things that we've talked about on this board for months and months and months are employees, responsibilities, accountability, things of that nature. And as we continue with the direction of the board to finesse these positions and roles and responsibilities, it easily aligns the employee with their review process. And so then you can go and talk to an employee and say, hey, Jim, how's it going? Jim, are you spending about 15% of your time on foundation work? And it gives Jim the opportunity to say, oh, wow, no, okay, this is a hot disaster and we're doing this. And it allows that review process to have a little bit more validity. So I do feel like that as we're working through these positions and these responsibilities and alignments, ultimately it's going to play back into that HR piece with reviews and give us more opportunity to coach and counsel our employees, which again is something we've been talking about for just months and months and months. So that's one of the things I do like about it, and I'm encouraged to see some of the responsibilities starting to kind of shake out a little bit. That's all I had to say on it. So I do think this is coming in the form of a recommendation to keep developing slide 50.
Tracy, does that translate into an adjustment in the job description for kind of everybody on here over the next few months?
I feel like it potentially could, but I'm not sure. Like, I know that one of the things, like with the administrative support person, with this model, I'd like to see that person have some potentially some experience in grant writing. And so that might be a little bit different from, let's say, an administrative support person that was more marketing driven or financial driven. So I do feel like that there could be a little bit of shift there too as we shake things out.
Thanks.
Tracy, did you say that is coming in the form of a motion?
I believe it is. Is that right, Diana? I mean, the committee just needs to know how to proceed. Yes.
You're bringing as a form of a motion, and I'll second it.
Was that Craig?
Yes. And just for clarity, it's my understanding that the motion is to give direction to staff to move forward with this process and concept, and a request to our foundation to begin the process of looking at and potentially rewriting our bylaws to support this concept, as well as recommendations on how we're going to reshape our board to support these missions. Is that what I understood, Tracy?
I'm silently laughing. Thank you for making my motion, Craig. Yeah, sorry, y'all. Yeah, the foundation cannot activate, obviously, without direction from our board on this. So yes, what Craig said. The concept would be for the transition team to continue working this model, and then also for the foundation to begin its work with their members as they see fit.
I think it's also important to point out that, you know, we did have a reduction in funding from the city to the tune of approximately $40,000 that I think that was maybe in anticipation of COVID, that we didn't have a reduction both for the city and county and sales tax during this COVID period. That if we feel like we do need a separate executive director of the foundation and relieve some of the responsibilities from the JCDA executive director, that maybe there could be an ask in the future, and that could be a possibility.
Thank you, Robert. We do have a first and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
We're ready for roll call. Hank Carr,
Yes.
Shannon Castillo,
Yeah.
Tracy Johnson,
Yes.
Brent Long,
Yes.
Aaron Murphy,
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols, Lindsay Nichols, Seth Thomas,
Yes.
Craig Torbick,
Yes.
Robert Williams,
Yes.
and Joe Wise.
Yes.
Sorry, this
Great.
is Lindsay. I just could not unmute. Sorry.
Thanks.
We will ask that the transition team bring back a report on where things stand next month. On to John Sevier operations. Hank, would you like to add anything that isn't already in the written report?
There is no update this month. Things are percolating along. There'll be some substantial information to talk about in the coming months.
Very good. Thank you. John Sevier disposition. Robert, do you have anything to add to the report here?
No, just, you know, unfortunately, we did not hear back from council. Rick Bearfield and his office were going to review the MOU that we were hoping to be able to present at this month's meeting. Unfortunately, we did not receive that, but we will reach out to them and have a meeting of the disposition committee and hopefully be able to report that back next month.
Great, thank you. There is no chair report this month. As for staff reports, they are written in your packet there. We had that in anticipation of this meeting, trying to squeeze a whole lot in, which we've done a successful job of getting a lot in an hour here. Does any of the staff want to add anything to what's written in the packet?
Unless anyone has any questions about anything in our report, we'll just let it stand as a written report.
Great. Well, with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, Frank. Great job first time out. Awesome.
Awesome job, Brent.